Hi guys, thank you all for tuning in and welcome back to Sewing Clara. In today's video, I will show you two ideas for embroideries on facial masks. I'm not gonna go over the steps how to make facial masks. I already have a tutorial for that on this channel, which I will link here in the right corner and also in the video description. Today we're gonna focus just on the embroidery. So we're gonna jump in kind of in the middle when the main parts for the masks were already ready, and we're gonna make two different embroideries. So let's start. I want to embellish the top of this mask with simple lines. I'm gonna make the lines with chain stitch because I find it pretty. And just like with the pattern here on the lining, I want that both sides would be the same. So I am simply going to align the guide like so. There's no reason for it. This is what I just decided. But you have to keep in mind that there is seam allowance that you're going to lose. So first, I'm going to outline where my mask will end once the lining and the upper section will be stitched together. So I will do it also on the other side so that I don't forget about it, because I actually almost forgot. So, and once I have my line that marks where the actual edge of the fabric of the mask will be, I can start creating my pattern. So I want the lines come like so, and they should be as wide as this guide. That sounds somehow good to me for whatever reason. So I will have 3 lines that would go like so. I will take a pin and pin it here, which is where the first line meets the seam allowance. And I will also put pin in like so. And I will do the same here. And here, and also for the bottom line. It will all be understandable once I turned the mask to the other side. So now you can see that I have here this pin which marks where the line starts on the bottom. So I'm gonna mark this like so. And here I will put in the guide. I will move the pin slightly, but I can already see where the edge is, so I can make a line like so. And now it should be easy because these lines are parallel. So if I put the guide like so and make a line here, it should be in the same position like on the other side. So let's see if my theory was correct. And now see, they align nicely in the center. So that's step 1. Step 2 is I want this to be kind of like a checked pattern almost. So I want at an angle lines that go this way. And I want them to be at a right angle. So I will align the guide like so, as close to the edge as possible, and make a line. And now I will simply move the guide a little bit upwards because I have to create a line that goes further up and down. I will align it and create another line. And then like so. And I think that should do. So this is going to be my kind of checked pattern, if you want to call it that. And of course now we need the same on this side, but again, because this is at an angle, at a right angle, it should be the same on both sides. If I go like so, but we will check it. because we want to be sure. We don't want to think, we want to know. And it looks good. So you see the pattern that I just created here. And I will stitch on each of the lines with probably this orange or yellow thread. These are also polyester threads, but they are thicker. These are the threads that I have used in my tutorials for the basic hand stitches. These are meant for denim. So I think I'm gonna take the orange one. I just like the way it looks. And here, you don't have to start in any particular order when you are making the chain stitch as a creative stitch. However, you should be careful that you don't wipe away any of your lines. So I will go over the lines once more so that they are really clearly visible, because in this case, I don't want to use my pen because should I kind of, be a little bit out of line somewhere, later it would be visible on my mask, and I don't want that. Now I reached the center. So when I turn the mask around, you can see the seam allowance here. These are these flaps that are extra. I pinned them here to one side. And now I'm just gonna stitch over it and basically stitch the seam allowance also to one side. So I just move across. Be very careful with the thread if it likes to tangle like this one. And I will continue with the chain stitch until I reach the end of the other side. And once I stitched the seam allowance here in place, for which I only needed 2 stitches because I'm making the chain stitch pretty big, I can remove the pin so that it wouldn't get in my way. So my first row of chain stitch is finished. Just to be sure, I will go over the lines again with the sewing crayon just to make sure they don't get wiped away. I just find it so much nicer to do it before it actually happens, because then I would have to measure everything again and I don't feel like doing it. And once I made the lines a little bit more visible again, I can start with the next row of chain stitch. And I think I'm just gonna skip this because you already know how to make chain stitch and that would be very repetitive, so I'm going to show you the end result. I just finished the embroidery, so here is what it looks like. And now I'm about to start putting these 2 pieces together. If you decided to create the same embroidery on your mask, now is the time to decide how you want to finish the edge. You don't necessarily have to stitch through the edge. You could take your iron and simply press. That way the edge would be nicely shaped and you could leave it like that. If you want to, you can do the chain stitch around the edge or the back stitch or simply the running stitch, which is what I want to do. So I made a very small knot at the end of my thread and I will start here. I will pinch the needle through here on the side. Now for the running stitch, I will not make a line for myself, but I will take my time and try to make the stitches equally long because it's around my face and it should look as good as possible. I will also be careful so that nothing gets tangled. Whenever that happens, maybe untwist your thread a little bit. And again, just take your time. Try to make the stitches as neat as possible, as equally long as possible. And the distance from the edge should be also the same. The reason why I decided to do the running stitch instead of the chain stitch is that for me personally, I would feel like it would be a little bit too much because the chain stitch is very distinct and quite thick, and I don't want to have the very same pattern around the edges. I want the edge to be stitched in a little bit more subtle way, but that's of course only my personal preference. There's nothing right or wrong with it. It's always up to you. With any sewing project, it's your sewing project, and whatever you find pretty is the right way to do it. As long as it functions the way you need it to function, there is literally never any right or wrong. I just finished stitching around the entire edge. I did the sew up and our mask is finished. I decided I want to wear it this way up, so this is going to be on my nose because I like how the pattern looks like, but you could of course wear it either way. That's entirely up to you. And one of the reasons why I like using the running stitch around the edge is, besides it being quite subtle, I like the fact that it looks the same from the top and from the bottom. So this is what it looks like from the denim side, and here we have the lining, so it's again simply a running stitch from the inside. If you're not so fond of running stitch and you would rather use back stitch, I highly recommend using the fall back stitch. That's a little bit neater on the inside. So if you remember from the video 3 basic hand stitches, we have here 2 kinds of the back stitch, and when I turn the fabric around, you'll see that the real back stitch is a little busy on the other side, and this is the fall back stitch. It looks a little bit neater. If you don't remember how to make the fall back stitch, I highly recommend watching the tutorial 3 straight hand stitches. And that's it with this mask. We can start creating the second one. So here we have the main pieces for our second mask. I already went on and finished a few of the first steps. When I stitched the middle of the denim pieces together, this time instead of folding the seam to one side and stitching it through, I folded the seam to each side and I have stitched through with simply running stitch. I picked sugar skull pattern because that's something I find really beautiful, so I went ahead and I took a pen and I painted the pattern on each side. I tried to keep it as symmetrical as possible. It's probably not gonna be perfect, but it will do. And I have here a few embroidery threads. I single threaded my needle with the black yarn. I used a needle threader, which is something that makes your life so much easier if your eyesight is not that great, or if you're using, like me now, a really thick yarn and it's kind of difficult to pull through the eye of the needle. Definitely get one of these. They will save you a lot of time. And I single threaded the needle, as I said, and I will make a simple knot at the end. And we will start with the nose, which looks like an inverted heart. And I want to do backstitch around the entire edge of the nose. Now that I finished the outline of the heart, I want to fill the entire heart out with the black thread. So you're going to do something similar to backstitch, but it's going to be basically creating multiple lines that are going to fill out the heart. The lines should not be too long, so you will have to do it in sections. So I'm going to start here. I'm simply going to stitch through just like, you know, if I were doing a back stitch, and I will stitch here closer to the other edge and create a couple of lines. They're gonna be very short here because I'm right at the pointy end of the heart. And then I will move forward to my right in this case. So it's really similar to backstitch, so you move the thread like a line to the other end, and you will stitch through about 1 millimeter, pull through, and here you go. You have a line here, and then you want to go close to the side of the line, pinch the needle through, and return like so. And that way you can create a filled space. And you have to make sure that you're not pulling too tight on the thread when you're creating the lines, because otherwise it would wrinkle your fabric. And I just realized that's exactly what I did. So I have to loosen it up a little bit. And whenever you come to a point where you feel like, okay, this line would be now too long, you can simply make the line shorter and move on like so. And once you finished one section, you would create another section of lines. So this is a good example. Just gonna stay here a little bit over the middle, and I will keep creating lines, and that's how I will fill out the space. Here's what it looks like when I filled one side. And here we go when I'm stitching through the other side. So I'm basically coming through a little bit over the middle again. So the needle, when I reach the middle, comes through the side that has been already filled with the black thread. So see, I'm coming here around the edge, pinching through a little bit over the middle, pulling the thread through, placing it back, and so on. And here's the result. The nose is finished. This is what it looks like from the right side, and from the wrong side all you see is the edge and a little bit of the stitches when I moved back and forward. So that's how you fill out spaces. Now I have here teeth, so I'm gonna fill them out the same way like I did, and for that I'm gonna use the white thread, and then I have here the mouth. I think for that I will use the red thread, and here where the loops start with the leaves, probably the green thread. I'm not sure, I'm just gonna gonna wing it. But basically for most of the parts I'm gonna use backstitch. For the leaves I'm gonna use chain stitch, and for all the spaces that I want to fill out I'm gonna use the stitch that I just have shown you. Here is what I have done so far. So I made a row of backstitch for the top of the lip and for the bottom lip and for the middle, and then I filled out the sides. And now I will create these lines at an angle, which will basically make an edge for the teeth, and then I will fill out each of these sections with the white thread, which will create the teeth. And then I will go on with the green thread, and I will create backstitch here for the twigs, and then I will decide later what to do with the blossom here and with the leaves, if I take another color or not. We'll see. Again, I'm just winging this. I went over the top and the bottom lip again with an additional row of backstitch because I felt it should be a little bit thicker. The grid for the teeth is now finished, and I still have a little bit of the red thread in my needles, so I decided to make these blossoms on each side red. And it's very simple to make the blossoms. All you need to do is to create chain stitch there. So this is the outer part of one of the leaves, so I'm just gonna come through with the thread, make a little loop, come very close to where I came through first, and move towards the middle of the blossom. Now I have my first blossom leaf, so I have to secure the end of this leaf, and I will move with the needle towards the point of the second leaf. And I will make sure it's not too tight. I will turn my work around a little bit because it's easier to work this way. So I'm going to create a loop here. I will come with the needle through very close to the place where I just came through and pinch it through the middle. Make sure it's not too tight, and I have the second leaf, so secure the end. Come through where the point of the next leaf is supposed to be. Turn my work around a little bit, make a loop, and make the next chain stitch. And here we have another leaf of the blossom. So I will come through here. So we will make 2 more leaves for the flower. Here we go. secure it. And the last one. I have to readjust my needle a little bit, the thread in the needle actually. Make another loop, come through with the chain stitch, pull it a little bit tighter but not too tight, secure the middle, and now I will turn my work around and I will do the sew up. Now I'm going over all these lines that end with a loop and with a few leaves. I have decided to use the dark green thread because it just looks pretty to me personally. So that's what I'm doing. And when I will finish all these lines with the dark green thread, I will grab the light green one and I will use here for the leaves chain stitch in the same way I did the chain stitch for the little flowers. And our embroidery is finished. So as a last step, I filled the teeth. So these are basically vertical lines that are filling each tooth section, and our embroidery is done. You can of course always add more loops with leaves and flowers. That is entirely up to you. And now there we go, mask is turned. And just like with the first mask, we have to shape it and pin the edge nicely. And for this mask, I have decided I'm gonna do around the entire edge chain stitch. I'm afraid I would not have enough of the black thread, so I will do it with this dark green thread. And I also want to stitch here on where the elastic is, buttons on each side to embellish the mask a little bit more. So let's go ahead and do that. Alright, the chain stitch around the entire edge is finished, and I still have here a little bit of the thread left, so I'm gonna use it in order to stitch on the first button. Here we go. So the first button is stitched in place, and now I'm gonna stitch on the remaining buttons like so. Here's what the mask looks like from the inside. So when you do the chain stitch around the edge, it looks more like a running stitch from the inside. So it's definitely a good way how to stitch the edge in place if you don't want to do just running stitch. And that is it for today. I hope that you found this tutorial helpful and that you enjoyed watching it. Thank you all so much for watching, and happy sewing!